Alright, folks, welcome back, everyone. 欢迎大家回来。今天是第416天 is day 416. Okay, let's get into. We got a bunch of characters yesterday. Paired up with a bunch of characters. Even vocabulary. So, y'all. Dang it, y'all. Oh, no, the top is not right. Yao 什么？要张。That seems a bit off. What is that? No. I feel like gotta be this. Something's a little off. Got it later. Yao Jiang. I think that's okay. Yeah. Amend. It's just like Biao Yang. Okay. Then we have Ying. Allow. Let's group with Chong. Yan. Yan. Along. I grew up with Chuan. Wei. Tiny. Got grouped up with no, this is more of a table thing. And then we rewrote the mnemonic. Nope. Too long. Song or shrug. I ended up with follow. Tong. Oh no, tool. Or is it Tong? Tong. And Li. Commonplace. Lined it up with the other Li. Record. Alright. Get into our lessons here.
搅拌
搅拌 stir and mix 拌
搅拌
搅拌 kind of had a problem with 搅 a little bit yesterday for the tone.
夺魁
夺魁 take by force 魁 chief or the leading position, win a championship. Fair enough.
夺魁跳槽
要桥要 jump 槽 Tall is trough. Ugh. I guess you're like jumping the trenches, or it's kind of. I can kind of see what the trough means. Figurative food and money trough. That's fair enough.
跳槽土壤
土壤 soils
土壤手腕
手腕 wrists hand wrists. Okay.
手腕
One's a bit weak on the side too. Good to see them being used as expected, of course.
搅拌土壤跳槽手腕夺魁
夺魁 Alright.
打搅
打搅 hit 叫 stir to disturb stirring the pot
打搅水槽
水槽 Okay.
水槽瓦窑
瓦窑 tile kiln was okay, but still kind of on a weak.
瓦窑党魁
当魁 party chief
党魁砖窑
砖窑 brick kiln yeah.
砖窑打搅
I missed an H.
瓦窑
Ah! Hi.
党魁 砖窑，水槽，
Okay.
两颊，
两颊 the cheeks.
两颊，毒瘤，
毒瘤 toxic, yeah, toxic tumor, malignant, poison tumor.
毒瘤，落魄，
破破 like fall and 破 how the 破 vigor. Ooh, poor is weak. Poor. Down and out. Like when vigor is fallen, you're down and out.
落魄，做，
Poor. Dang. Oh, it kind of reminds me of. No, it doesn't. Kidding. Does it? No. Leftist is pretty. Yeah. I only think of Spade because it's new. Oh, there's the door. I was looking. Lazy. I'm like, there is something with the leftist though. That's not good enough. And we'll try. Okay, Dumbledore is in the bathroom of the office building where he's battling a magical leftist amongst a bunch of hills that cover the top. Okay. Use a communist manifesto to cast a spell that calls okay. Alright, that's alright. We need to redefine that one. Spoil. Kind of reminds me of Jay. Kind of rough. It kind of looks like Jay without this top right part. Have an abortion. Dual tie. Interesting. Fall into dual rule. This one might be tough.
做，夫，
Fool. Oh, hey, fool. This is apply as opposed to what? Spread? Interesting. I want fool up here. With the trellis. Frankenstein is in front of the house where he is trying to apply some medicine to the foreman who lies unconscious in the grass lawn. He gets a compass and applies it to the foreman's forehead, then takes a trellis and applies it by rubbing it all over the... Yeah. Or... I can flow with that. We'll see. Something different. Sign is in front of the house. We notice a wandering foreman around the trellis outside. Able to apply people skills. Offer the foreman compass and point the foreman by 不要 mo that apply 敷衍 oh 敷衍 perfunctory. Holy perfunctory. Been a while perfunctory. How does this work? Apply and develop perfunctory. I don't see it.
夫
We'll come to that when we come to it.
两颊剁落魄夫毒瘤操
Tall. Looks more like a dal with some rice. Okay. I could use establish. Or create. Nope. Not that unique. Oh. Casper's in front of the barn where there is a rough road. The road is so rough because it's covered with uncooked rice. Oh, come on. Casper goes up and reads about decoration. Needs it to be the rough road to honor. Oh, goodness gracious. Casper's in front of the barn where road for more rice. Helping out. Trying to help in the rough season. Taking care the rice to the road. Okay. Call me. Interesting. Okay. 粗糙.
操崩
Not quite the same. That I used it as a figurative rough. That's next to the rough road and the rough field. Bung. Yeah, we have bung. With bung being hopping. Right? Where the bung? I swear there's a hop. Where are you, bung? There it is. You stretch taut. Okay. Parsnips is in front of the English Manor where he is shooting moons at the nearby English mountains. Okay. He loads moons into a big stretch of silk until it's stretched taut, and then let's go, launching the moon across the land. Clearly it's okay. Shooting moons by stretching silk. It's okay. I think we can make that work. Dye. Bandage. Interesting.
崩锯
Saw. The G that I can think about is G, which is residence. Where are you? Where are you, G? I think. Am I crazy? Or was it not a tombstone? Oh, here it is. Yeah, reside. G. G. Saw. Julius Caesar is in the bathroom of the house. Saw in hand. Before him is a metal flagpole placed on top of a headstone. He is trying to saw it in half to make it more portable and use the headstone to make sure he does. It is that saw. Okay. Julius is in the bathroom of the house. Landing that is objects. He'll mark all of his properties with headstones and metal flags. Orders them to saw up. Sure. Metal flags and headstones it is. BNG. Chain and saw. Oh, okay, handsaw. Oh, gee. Okay.
锯矿
Kwang. That has Kwang in it. And it also deals with something about spacious. What was it? Expand? And then there's also mine. Or extensive. Oh, actually, enlarge is what I was thinking of. Cool. And then Kwang, we have the mine. Okay. Large is cool. Okay. Spacious. Koopa's in the bathroom of the chapel, where he is building a spacious aquarium to house the holy fish of the chapel shore. Covered by a shack that has a sun at the top to illuminate the aquarium. Koopa runs back and forth from the sink. Buckets of water to slowly fill the ground. This takes a while because it's so spacious. Yeah. Decent. Oh yeah. Spacious wild wilderness. Skip class. Well, that's interesting. That's quite a pivot.
矿坝
Tyrant. Dang. With the soil. This is gonna be interesting. In the bathroom. Bart Simpson is in the bathroom and auditorium where he's building a dam. He stacks a bunch of moons on, packs them with soil, then covers them with a huge sheet of leather, making a dam, then pulls the fire line, making rain fall all over getting the bathroom intending wet, and stands on top of the dam as it laughs and getting soaked from rain during. I mean, he is too. Alright, happening at night. It's okay. I think we're good. Shui Ba. Ooh, T Ba. T is weak.
坝
Okay.
操 矿 崩 聚
Yeah, that's because daylight savings time is about to happen, which will forward 1 hour again. This is actually the usual time. This is provided that I don't get like personal DMs or something like that holds me over. This is the usual time.
Ba.
Okay. All right. All right. What? Oh, that's a buckle. Sure how it went from buckle to tile. This resin? Vermilion. Treasure chest. Body. You're buying your JLPT ticket. If they don't sell out, you have to buy a ticket and it's limited? Dang. Good luck on grabbing it though. How do I... That's definitely belt, right? Okay, belt buckle. I don't know how to... Why am I having a problem with... Hold up. How do you... Oh. Oh, okay. Okay. Good. Okay. Alright. What do we have? Rip. That's a great start.
会
It's 60 places? Oh. And it's that popular, huh? That's interesting.
月
Oh, that's kind of weird.
桥 螺
Yep. How do we do the side? The side hustle. What's another way to say side? Oh, okay. Spiral shit. Way to say side. Dang. Where have my thoughts gone these days, man?
Xing
Nope. Something like, oh, that's orangutan is. Nope. What? Like, okay.
I
That one's tough. That's very tough. Why do I want to type that?
蛇
Holy.
铁
I forgot how complicated that. I forgot how congested that was. Huh.
记
Or I guess calculate, measure.
I 仓
So when is the JLPT going to be for you? Your ticket punching.
叶
Heck!
尖
Why am I having a problem with... How do I do infirmary plus... Oh, Ting. Okay. Like, what's going on?
问 牙
Or bank. Hey, Gecko. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah. Have I been? Yes, every single day. I've been doing this every single day. I've been doing pretty well. It's a fairly big coincidence. Today is the day we catch up. So, what have you been doing lately? Oops. Phone. Uh-oh. As dish. Have we been using patch dish? No.
科聊
Oh.
情 除 照
What's the coincidence? You're doing pretty good. Kind of caught up in a routine with work and daily life, but it's all good. Yeah. I turned 39 today. Today is my last 30th year before I become middle-aged. Probably now it's figures. Nope. That is at the moment.
仓 西
Right. And J. Probably J.
绿 死
It's like this. Yeah. Fine.
醉
Thanks. Did I get to celebrate? No, we don't really celebrate birthdays. I ate my 2 hard-boiled eggs as per a Chinese, I suppose, a Chinese tradition. No, not really. Don't really do too much. That type of thing.
母
Get to celebrate like we celebrate every single day. Do the best we can. Each and every day. This is right. Provoke. How often do I get to use this? 1. not that great.
着，惹，
Yeah. Do it every day. It's a celebration every day. No, we don't really do anything. My parents and I are a day at a time type of person, I suppose.
转，玉，
Nope. Nope. It's the three-part abundant, yeah. Which is still more. Oh. What do you typically do on birthdays? I think we do like okay. This one is a problem with the timid soul. Oh no, I know how to. Okay. That's fine.
E,
Anything you can wish me for the years to come? I don't particularly have too many desires in my life. But certainly it would be nice to see happier people. Be an interesting wish. You know, less encounter with cynicism. Usually most of the favors people can do for me is to be a better version of themselves. Right? A more desirable, content version of themselves. What is going on here?
宣，
Nothing too fancy on birthdays here. Usually a good restaurant with the family. Then, that being said, you share a birthday with your daughter, right? You mentioned that. So you usually host a birthday party for her and her family and her friends. I mean, her friends. Sounds like a jam-packed day most of the time. Yeah. Yeah, there isn't any youngin in our immediate family, so we do not do birthdays that way anymore. Everyone in the immediate family are more or less middle-aged or senior citizens. Should live each life as well as one can.
鸡， 雀，
And that sounds like me a pretty selfless wish. Yeah, the nice thing about, like, one thing about being selfless, I suppose, is that all my needs are met. So one can make a selfless wish as a testament to one's privilege, right? So if there's anything that I could benefit from would be all the things I don't have control over, right? So if I had to make a wish, much like any other human being, they would wish for something that to happen that they don't have control over. And I most definitely do not have control over other people. Thank you, James. My wishes tend to be selfless because most of the time the things that I wish for that are selfless are the things I don't have control over. So I don't have control over people's happiness or like their complaints. And I think there are far more people in the world than myself. So if they're unhappy, then naturally the environment is unhappy. So whenever you want to do something, like we live on the well, I live on the internet. I know Gecko, you have a much more varied experience. Most of my time, my environment is the internet. So there are far more people than myself. So the natural wish is that there are far more happier people online so that your immediate environment will be filled with happy people, not cynical and really depressed people. What a win for the masses. A selfish wish would... Ooh, I got one. Here's a turn of phrase. The wish that I'm wishing for is far greedier in a way because the wish is harder to achieve, which is to make other people happy so then I don't have to witness it. And that's like wishing for many people versus wishing for one, right? So if I had to like play a business game, like an objective game, I'm requesting more than what the wish is asking. It's like, hey, what kind of car do you want? I want a good car for everyone else. That's far harder to achieve than supplying a car for one person. Like, oh yeah, what would I trade up my wish for a Lambo? Everyone gets a Lambo. That's probably kind of the way to go about it. In a way, like I don't know if you've ever I forgot who made this theory, or there's a bunch of people who wrote about this theory, where the nature of the human condition is that most of our wishes are selfish, regardless of how altruistic or benevolent it is, because it's human condition to favor and contextualize all of our desires based on ourselves. So my wish, my selfless wish, is inherently selfish as well, because if there are more happy people in the world, then I would encounter less cynicism, and there would be opportunities for me to thrive when other people thrive. And that's kind of the whole idea of being an educator, right? Or being a scientist, or at least in my opinion, that is why I wanted to become a scientist, or became a scientist, and like a teacher, or like a mentor. And most of my life, there are many things I can't do alone, and there are also many things I can't do or not even know how to do. So the biggest wish I ever have each day of my life as I'm getting older is that everyone else also achieves their ambitions, because what makes them flourish will benefit me in the long run. And this is under the naive concept that the world, there are more benevolent, socially adaptable, compassionate people in the world than there are cynical, narcissistic people in the world. So if I, despite, when I say, hey, everyone should be happy, those narcissistic people, that's perfectly fine. I actually believe in human condition that when people are happy and they are sufficiently happy and content in life, they seek altruism and benevolence and ways to spread their legacy. So I think oftentimes the desperation of selfishness, and like later down the road, like when you get older, the desperation comes from the lack of contentment with one's life. So when other people are happy, they might truly more likely seek to fill their life with being compassionate, right? Desperation is countered by luxury of contentment. So if contentment comes as a luxury, they might seek, at least I'd like to believe humans will tend to seek building legacy by sharing compassion. I think it's very, very tough for the world when you have people filled with desires that are not met, right? Ambitions that are not met. And therefore, if you're expecting them to be friendly, spare time, and whatnot, it's constraint. There are plenty of nice people out there and kindness, and they put the other people first, so to speak. But those people don't thrive. They don't typically thrive. It is human nature to try to preserve self and make sure self is running before you are able to participate in altruism. And I think there are far more people that I encounter nowadays online that feel like something is missing. Not like resource dependent. Like, it's even less about resource now. It's more like mental satisfaction, right? You have people who are... I see them way light years ahead of where I was when I was younger, right? We talk about age when we talk about birthday wishes. Like, when someone just linked this video to me, it's in the Discord, but Churn linked this video of me of this like 25-year-old who failed their N3 JLPT exam, which James, I don't know if James is doing the N3 or the N2. I think it's the N3 he's hoping to get a ticket for. And this guy is 25 years old. But based on what I gathered from the thing, long story short, I'll just cut to the chase. It seems like it's you're doing the N3. You just got your ticket? Very nice, James. I look forward to hearing your experience with the N3. Like, just overall, like the environment and whatnot. So to cut to the chase, this person posted a video, but looking around the person's channel, what they're lacking is vision, right? They're lacking a calling. So they're still exploring, and they're 25 years old, which apparently they've been studying Japanese since 19, and they moved to Japan like a year ago. That's this is all gathering from their social, like their YouTube channel. And my first thought is like, yeah, that's what I mean. There are very nice people, ambitious people, and maybe people who want to share things, but it seems like you're getting older. There's such an age shift in trying to find joy and happiness in all of the obstacles. Like, life presents obstacles, but they are not without their joy and reward. So that's kind of where I am when I think about certain things. You certainly don't mind wishing for happier people and a happier, more joyous, less cynical world. So as a birthday gift, you often genuinely hope you and I get to witness that someday. Me too. Somehow like a redistribution of stuff, and it's, you know, people are born thinking that it doesn't suck to be humans. Like, I genuinely think that when I ask someone, when you ask me like, do I do anything special for my birthday? I don't really do anything special for my birthday because I am in a part of my life that I have the liberty to live up each day as I see fit, right? So if I do less, it is my choice that I did less. If I do more, it is my choice that I did more. So that's a very privileged position. So in that case, it often means that I do the most I desire each and every day, and that is a very excellent luxury. Now, other people, when I start talking to them, the cynicism is not really baked into the idea that they distrust other people, but the idea that they constantly distrust themselves and constantly having feedback on how they're not good enough, or some sort of variant of that cage for themselves. So whenever you're talking to them, it's incredibly difficult to motivate them. And here's one. I'll share something that I heard recently. This is what I mean by the cage of circle. Let's do like a quick cyclic argument. So, you got to start somewhere. So let's start with A. Well, this person thinks that they want help, right? They want help. And then when they go to get help, right? Because they want help, not need help. So they believe that they want help. So they go to get help, right? But then, as a nice person, they would say, well, others need help too. So that means that if others need help, you shouldn't get help because others need help. You see, there's a problem here, right? So oftentimes when you think about this, then in order, you have to understand that if you don't get help, right? If you want help, or dear me, need help, if you don't get help, you might actually affect others getting help too. So like you can see, like it's cyclic all over the place, right? It's hard to get out of, where you have people who believe that they like to help people. But they don't help themselves. And then when they don't help themselves, or they try to get help, they think that by getting help, they're not helping others. So it's like a cyclic argument where they're just stuck in place. Where like when they get help, they think they're robbing the help from others by wanting to help others. But they need to get the help in order to create help. So by being helpless, it could harm others' opportunities to help. Like you have to help yourself in order to help others. And if you let yourself become a problem, right? It's still creating a new problem for others. So I'm not using any specifics, but it's like saying a student, for example. A student wants a teacher's help. But other students, they argue with themselves and say other students also need the teacher's help. So instead, they would say, oh, I shouldn't take up the teacher's help so that the teacher could help the other students. Because they want to help the other students. And this cycle continues. It happens so often where you have people, and just to throw in that one guy, the 25-year-old that failed or made like a video about them failing, how they feel about failing the N3. They're kind of asking for help, as in emotional help or something like that. But while at the same time, they are producing videos to help other people. So they were spending a lot of time making like Japanese learning videos or like interest videos. But at the same time, they find out later that they need help with the thing that they're making videos to help others. That creates a problem. It creates like it's not intentional or malicious or out of cynicism, is that when someone wants to help someone, and they're presenting information only to become the people who realize that their information is the source of their problem. Like it's kind of a mixed bag. It's very like, if this person is asking for help and having a problem, then all the stuff that they did with their video to help others, did that generate more problems? Right? And being nice doesn't necessarily mean you're successful at helping others. Being healthy and content and successful likely can help others. But when you're not healthy, not content, not successful, you might actually harm others. And not in the sense of intentionally harming others, but you might add to the workload. So, long story short, that's why if I had a birthday wish, long story short, basically, if I had a birthday wish, I hope that there are going to be less people in the world each year with less problems, or look at problems in a way to benefit and improve themselves, not look at a problem in which they spread it or used to avoid it. So often right now, I see problem solving skills as a way to be avoidant. So if you don't have to solve the problem and you can work around it, that is the preferred path. And then when you avoid that problem, they go on to help other people while avoiding that problem. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're not nice or kind. The idea is then those problems don't get addressed. I will give you a hot take. This is my working hot take about language learning, right? You have a native language. Most people have a native language, right? And native language requires communication. Native language requires communication skills, right? That involves speaking and listening, right? And listening. Now, if you go on to learn a target language, oftentimes this gives a second chance. A second chance at figuring out that you still need communication skills, speaking and listening skills. The thing is, oftentimes when I look at someone and I hear them speak in their native language, usually it's in English, right? I'm using the idea of a Japanese language learner here. They speak English, they obviously make content. This is dependent on if they give me examples of their writing and their communication style. Their communication style shows that they don't really practice speaking or listening already, and their writing is like pretty good. Like, their writing and typing is above their speaking and listening skills because it comes out in their recorded stuff. So if this is deficient already, and what I mean by that is it's lower than their writing and reading skills natively, it will translate into their target language. And that's usually what happens here. In fact, it would be even more exacerbated. It will be far more noticeable. Now, what is that second chance? The second chance is to raise that awareness again. It's like you're hopefully, okay, now they have trouble listening and speaking Japanese because they have trouble listening and speaking in English. Those are the same skills. They have the same skills in how they improve their speaking skills and their communication skills, right? Listening and speaking is involved in practicing speaking. Whether you do it in English or in Japanese, your routines are very similar. So when you go to learn a second language, it's a second opportunity. Now you're an adult, you're older, more experienced. You hope that when you encounter the same problems, you solve them. And hopefully this 25-year-old learns to solve it. I don't know what's going to happen in the next year, but fingers crossed that my birthday wish is for this person in the next year to overcome their lack of speaking and listening skills. And it's not specifically related to Japanese. It's the idea that we live in a society, especially online. This person is like very trendy. They do videos on trendiness. So I would say they probably are chronically online. Most of their skills probably make them a great writer and reader. And that's exactly what happened. In their N3 exam, they did really well in their writing. and reading skills, but they fail their speaking and listening skills. But I don't think it's because they're not working hard. In Japanese, I think largely their habits that they are instilled has not been addressed yet. So, like if you're having problems communicating and expressing and listening in your native language, all of your routines and stuff to learn speaking and listening skills in another language will be exacerbated. So right now, that's kind of what it's like. Now, I don't think it's a good or a bad thing. I think society is kind of changing, but standardized testing is to test all of the aptitude. So unless the requirements change, like for example, when I speak to people in English, like you and James, right? Gecko, Gecko and James, like you guys both, you write already and type and respond and ask questions at a higher level, like in English, and English may not even be your native language, right? The idea is if you don't do that in any of the existing language that you have, both typing and listening and then responding, then that does not change, in my opinion, fundamentally when you go to a target language. It might actually even be weaker than that. And if you can tell the separation between their reading comprehension versus their speaking and listening comprehension, it will be further apart in the targeted language. So I without a doubt know that this guy probably has N1 Japanese reading and writing, or reading and typing comprehension. I don't think it's writing, because writing is, kanji and all that. But their reading and typing comprehension is probably N1 or something. But their speaking and listening is not necessarily coming from the idea that they don't have the capacity to do so. It's that they don't do it. You don't do it very often. The average, I said this before, it's not bad or good. Most people are happy when they speak and listen at like a B2 English level. Like the vast majority over these 7 years, right? Celebrating birthdays after all. These 7 years of communicating with other people online, B2 and lower. Like that's what I literally stand by when someone says, "Oh, I'm learning English." It's like my English is around A2, and I'm like, "You're almost there." For colloquial English online, the colloquial English don't go beyond like B1 or B2, but standardized exams don't discriminate against that. Standardized exam is not supposed to teach colloquial English. Whatever is available or normal, so to speak, ironically. And JLPT is very similar. It's to teach scholastics. And like if everyone talked like a high school graduate and a college graduate, then English would be very different sounding right now. Now you're going into a target language in which you're going back voluntarily for an exam that is supposed to be comprehensively scholastic. So if you go and compare that to someone who's like natively speaking Japanese, you still might get the different correlations, especially in English. English is one that, for myself, I don't think most people sound like they're from middle school. Not a bad or a good thing. It happens to be the norm. Colloquial English sits around middle school and like 6th grade to like 9th grade. That's as far as English goes on the net. So whenever someone says like, "Oh, I want to become a native English speaker," yeah, middle school to high school. Not even past high school. So you don't really need C2. I don't know about what will happen to Japan in the future, but English certainly is not one of them. And that's where these people are coming from. They're learning Japanese as their target language, where they spent enormous amount of time flexing a specific skill set that isn't speaking or listening. In your opinion, what can one do at an individual level to ever so slightly push the world in that direction? Just focus on being the best version of oneself? Ugh. I wish I had an answer to that. I think the greatest thing, like if I had to make a top list, right? Like we're all about that top list, right? No particular order. I know this sounds ironic, but off the top of my head, ability for self-evaluation, support system, and communication forward, human communication forward. I think those would be off the top of my head. I talk about these three things whenever someone asks me, how can one improve one's own current state? These three things. And these are really general, so there are obviously more steps to these. Like, what part of self-evaluation am I referring to, right? Self-evaluation is the ability to self-improve, right? So that is the thing that you were talking about, make a better version of oneself. Support system, that is something is very difficult to control. So support system is extra, like external, right? So having an excellent support system. And then communication, human communication. So this means interacting between yourself and the support system. So these would be the three, I would say. If there was a push at the individual level seeks to establish a support system, a routine for self-evaluation, and something that gets them to communicate with other human beings. It can be anything, right? If it means making cat videos, learn to communicate through cat videos. And that communication have to specifically be for the sake of human communication, not how you optimize a machine to do something, or how you optimize for views, or optimize for subscription, or optimize for money. You're optimizing for human communication. I think those are my top wishes, or like top pushes for world in direction. Everyone requires, hopefully, a substantial, sufficient form of self-evaluation, because they can reveal this. You like this top, it makes sense to you anyway. Yeah, so the reason is like, are you familiar with the US checks and balances, where you have like the executive branch, and then you have the judicial branch, and then the what is, I guess I forgot what the Senate is. Oh, legislation. The legislative branch. So the checks and balances. And when I said top three, those are the checks and balances. It's not quite right on top of each other, but you have the executive, your actions, right? These are the actions taken. And then you have your judgments. And then you have your like proposals. You want to say like proposals. It's kind of like that. I'm structuring it in a way where, what do a human need? Human needs to be able to evaluate themselves, because their opinion matters. So your own opinion matters. So as a kid, you have to establish your own opinion, right? So when your first 18 years of life, you're going to learn how to self-evaluate. Without self-evaluation, you have no identity. So you need that identity. And then where are you going to get outside feedback? What about outside feedback? Support system, right? When you fail, when you yourself can no longer self-evaluate and you lose the ability to self-evaluate, your support system is an external check and balance to yourself. And then in order to make that work, you must have to communicate with each other, right? So like between your support system and yourself, you have to make a consistent effort to be able to communicate between the two. Otherwise, there's no room for a support system. And there's no room for needing to self-evaluate. Usually you require a form of communication to do that. So those are like the 3 checks and balances. It's more like 2, just like between A and B, and then communication is just in the middle as a facilitator. Do you think all language really are slowly but surely moving towards simpler, less rich, for better or for worse? Will C2 level become rare and rare even in people's native language? I don't think C2 is becoming rare. I think C2 is becoming... Okay, so 2 things. When I'm saying C2, most people have to pass C2. Now, this is input C2, but output to pass, right? The output is to pass. What I'm saying is it's becoming rarer and rarer to use C2. So output is less than C2. Now, whether that reduces the number of C2 people, I don't think so. I think in general, the formal education, formalities, and professionalism will continue to mitigate C2. The idea is it's being rare and rarely used for less simpler but contextualized. So like simpler, oftentimes simpler means easier, but more like heavier contextual, heavier context. So in a way, you could say less communication. And is that going to stay true? I don't actually know. The reason why you need less communication is technology. Technology can support that. So my theory right now, which can change next year or the year after, is that simpler communication is actually heavier in context. And the heavier in context is providing incentive for less communication skills because it is bolstered by technology. So you can do less conversation if you simply show the person the video. Or like, hey, this is how I feel. Insert video. So there's less need for language communication. But I think quite most people are C2 input competent. So because of formal education requirements like JLPT and like your standardized English grammar exams, all of those are going to continue. So I don't think it's going to become any rarer, like not statistically rare, that the quote unquote detailed, like high detailed language is still there. The idea is there's a less and less incentive to use it. Now, you can forget all of that. So the theory about, well, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? And that's true. So that could promote a rare and rare C2 level, because once you learn it once, you might forget it because it's not necessary. And I think technology does play a very large role in that. If everything is typing, then you don't have to write, right? And if you're thinking about, well, where does writing come in? Well, if you try to write kanji, I mean, you don't really have to write kanji. You can type romaji on a Roman keyboard. Like, technology has come with many heavy contexts. Like, for example, when you say cinema, right? How is cinema so functionally dynamic? It's heavily contextualized. And when you heavily contextualize it, how do you execute on it? An image, which is bolstered by technology. Even the net speak of cinema, technology causes this to happen. So like the moment someone creates a meme, technology amplifies its contextual applications so that you don't require the C2 or the complexity of written language. You can contextualize it. And other languages have done that. So other quote unquote C2 language, or like if they're fluent in other languages, there are alternative things. So I think the shift is kind of different now. In English, it's becoming heavily contextualized. Ironically, very ironically, a descriptor language has become contextual language. So whenever you say bro, you can't possibly know what it means without context. It requires context. There was a time when brother meant brother. You know? When brother equals brother, so to speak. And now it's not. It's quote unquote simpler, but one could argue it's more nuanced now because it requires context. And we already have this in when we're studying Japanese and Chinese. There's context involved. However, it seems like it's complex because you need to understand the context. So in English, it's developing the context right now, which is interesting, right? Now English is starting to develop, and the question is English, the way English is written, gonna change to heavily contextualize that stuff? I have no idea. I almost feel like memes now. If you look at memes, right, and you're thinking, which language is inherently meme now? Like, what I mean is, which language is adopting which language is adopting the default? It's English. Even like when you take Japanese memes, is represented in English. So this part is not a C2 requirement yet, right? So like standardized exams for English does not include the complexity of memes, or it does not include the complexity of NetSpeak. And of course, again, simpler and complexity are not suggesting whether it is good or bad, or it is harder or easier, because memes are difficult. I already talked about like the perception of simplicity and complexity. Oftentimes simplicity and complexity is analogous to difficulty. For myself, is whatever is practice, whatever is more popular, or whatever is falling out of popularity or trending upward and downward. So the frequency is like one of the goated responses of the use case of communication skills. So that's why speaking and listening cannot be substituted simply by knowledge. With knowledge, speaking and the execution of speaking and listening can be still underdeveloped in a way. And the top three, the third point, when I mentioned human communication, the goal is to have an incentive to promote human communication for any individual. Like for myself, learning Chinese and Japanese promotes English communication, right? And then it would lead to Japanese communication and Chinese communication in terms of interacting with humans. So if that breaks apart and there's no incentive for human communication, then any form of communication in general is going to be deficient for human communication. So one of the top three is to have an internal motivation for human communication skills. Whichever it is. It could be using ChatGPT in order to learn how to communicate with humans. Any form, the idea is straying away from the tendency or the popularity of wanting to communicate with other humans will naturally break down human communication skills. If you want to only rely on writing to other people to communicate, then naturally speaking and listening will take a back seat. And it could change tomorrow, like the trends could change tomorrow. So naturally, that's kind of where I would conservatively say that's where language is. It's different. It's a different modal shift over time with respect to like accelerated the popularity of process that they're using. So like if ChatGPT becomes the major mediator of communication between two people, then whatever ChatGPT offers will enhance that frequency. Anything that's disuse will lead to deficiency or like loss or maybe like under practice of that device, whatever the process itself. Process-oriented thinking is inadequate right now. So if you're like relatively speaking, goal-oriented thinking, goal-oriented mindset is the most popular mode of thinking right now. So effectively, when you're talking to someone, usually that's the focal point. And to exercise process-oriented thinking, it would require some sort of challenge to the person to discover what process-oriented thinking can suggest or like could be beneficial or useful. And I usually talk about the lesser representation of things. So in the future, if process-oriented thinking is hyper-realized, then I'll talk about goal-oriented thinking. That's kind of the idea. Okay, like this. You're familiar with it, although you're not sure how well it's working at the moment, but you like the principle behind it. Oh yeah, the checks and balance system. Yeah, I know. The current Trump administration would make you think that the executive branch of the US government has all the cards. You don't know if language is necessarily becoming more or less simple. Yeah, just some word structures fall out of popularity and new ones are created. Yeah, it's modal. Yeah, modal by popularity. You do witness in your professional life that the language used in communication is definitely not above B2 level 99% of the time. I kind of, yeah. For me, the rare time that I've encountered C2 conversations is in formal occasions, multidisciplinary formal occasions. So what are these multidisciplinary formal occasions? Usually it's at an international level or like a very highly specific specialized international level where they invite other disciplines. It's multidisciplinary. So like maybe a graduate school hosted conference in like 4 fields, and those experts have to communicate in 4 fields, right? Like across 4 fields. They are all experts in their individual fields, but they must communicate and disseminate information between those 4. That's when I have encountered maybe C2 plus. And the vocabulary is like, I would say every other word is used in a manner that is not used in casual conversation or even in professional conversation right now, because professional conversation, there's far more professions that are being used to engage with other people, and the vast majority of people do not use that level of conversational skills. In fact, sometimes lowering your conversational skills intentionally creates the current popularity of being relaxed, being grounded and genuine in candidness, at least in the Western society, like Western things, where like obviously Japan has a bit of an exception to that, but Western society, when it comes to professionalism, it's rarely seen as the old school professionalism where there's a lot of technicalities. We speak in technicalities as opposed to speaking in wholesomeness or vibing or groundedness. That seems like it's an incentive now. Like if I balance between speaking incredibly technical and then not technical, the not technical part gets a lot of representation. It gets a lot of mileage. So like, hey, you know what I mean? Yeah, like we're just we're just here chilling out. I know we're talking about our annual revenue reports, but let's just chill a little bit and try to stay a little bit grounded. You feel me? Right? That stuff, it can seem like it, I mean, to me, if I were to wind it back a little, that seems a little unprofessional. That's a little too, like, you're being too candid, too, like, loose. So there's a lack of accountability for being so loose. And that would give me concerns, because is this person like taking this seriously, quote unquote seriously, right? And I think nowadays the office space, like the majority of the professionalism has kind of like climbed down a little. Like when it comes to like technical speak and using C2, it often talks about, you know, you mentioned it's often incredibly nitpicky. It comes off as stringent, too serious, but that's what professionalism was. It is very serious. Your word choices are incredibly impactful. So when you're using such words as, is this sufficient in order to achieve our desired outcome by quarter four? Quarter four being the, you know, the time period between like October 21st to December 14th for any clarifications, right? I don't really think those things are a thing anymore. At least I've never been in a corporate room, so I won't say much. But when it comes to like scientific writing, that I like to think that it still holds up in scientific writing and like discussion between, I don't know, experts in the scientific field. You can kind of see the jargon and diction shift whenever you talk, when you like, I don't know if you have this feeling often, Gecko or James, when you watch a video, right? When you watch a YouTube short or however you consume things, you can kind of feel, in English at least, when you know something is educational and something is not. That's kind of what I mean by a shift in diction, right? So not in the sense of C2, like we're not talking about metrics here. We're talking about sophistication in terms of like its intended use. Oftentimes C2 plus is that feeling when you know someone is trying to educate you versus someone who is there for entertainment. So like when you hear even like a content creator, like we're talking about, they don't have to be scientists or like practicing theoretical physicists. The idea is when you listen to something, especially in English, I can't speak for any other language because I don't have that high competence in other languages. You can feel it still. You hear it and you're like, oh wow, this person sounds very informative, almost precisely so that they are trying to circumvent or concise enough so that they aren't like speaking in a generalized way in which it can be misconstrued, right? Almost as though you're in a classroom, right? And yet they still use the convention of leading someone on, twisting and surprising the person using forms of engagement. But you can definitely tell the difference between someone who's instructionally speaking, at least in English, at a higher level than a lower level. Whether that's bad or good, it's up to the person's common habits, right? C2 can sound pompous and eccentric and unnecessary, so quote unquote unnatural, and then it sometimes it doesn't, etc. It's the appropriateness. So I don't even think C2 as a measure of complexity or professionalism is kind of useful anymore in that way. Like an advanced level can be seen as unnatural. which is kind of crazy because then you get into like Japanese and stuff, and someone's saying like, let's see, do you think you do it? Okay. You feel like using rich language used to command respect and evoke professionalism, whereas now it can be sometimes feel pretentious. Exactly. Pretentious to do so even if you're expressing properly by the books. Exactly. For myself, I sound pretentious. Like, without a doubt, I won't beat around the bush. Literally someone, whenever I start something, start a new project, someone comes by and like projects their opinions to me, and I would counter argue by saying like, well, your opinions, I respect that you have opinions, but remember that those are opinions, and opinions come in wide ranges, and I just happen to be someone who entertains other perspectives. So presenting another perspective would suggest that I'm being pretentious, because that person would respond emotionally by suggesting that I sound more important than they do. And that is a projection of their own insecurities. I literally got told 3 days or 4 days ago that I understand that you think the Japanese dub of Kiwami 3 is a goated or something, or is low-key better than the other dubs, which is English and Chinese, right? And my response was that, well, that's not entirely my experience. However, I want to, express that I experience all three at the same time, right? Like, I like the idea of experimenting and being exposed to the practicing of multiple languages. And he immediately came off as this person left and say, just because you're learning a language doesn't mean you're better than everyone. And I'm like, I didn't say I was better than everyone. I was speaking that I had multiple language preferences. And I was being very clear about it. If you only have a single language preference, then go find that person that's appropriate to you. However, because of the way I was speaking, it comes off as pretentious. Whether it's academics or learning capacity, whenever the common colloquial English is used, when you're talking about the technicalities of learning, right? Like, either you're here to be instructed, like right now I probably sound like I'm a lecturing person who is talking a little bit overreaching a bit on their perceptions of like net speak. However, that's gonna be the way it sounds typically when you describe your observational skills and your anecdotal skill, like your anecdotes that support, like you're trying to collect converging evidence to support a running theory or a thesis or working hypothesis. It's gonna sound technical, instructive, and that often comes off as either pretentious or like raising some sort of what did this person call me? Holier. Like I'm like somehow moral grandstanding in order if you want to learn things and express more ideas, it somehow translates into being pretentious or becoming higher in value. Like, oh, you're better than other people. And you know what? If I was cold and unsympathetic and objective, like what the internet would suggest humans should be, knowing more definitely means you're better. But I'm not a cold, calculating, objective person, or at least less so these days. So unlike the internet, I want to exercise sympathy and empathy, and that comes back to the idea of using colloquial English. So when I come back down and speak at a specific empathetic like way, right, B1, B2 at most, then people will stop, like the frequency of that interaction where someone thinks you're being better or pretentious goes away. It's like night and day. I use B1, B2 English to break the ice, and then occasionally when that person asks me something technical over time, I then go up to test the waters. But generally speaking, you go down in order to be more appropriate. And that's not because C2 is not appropriate for communication. It happens to be whatever is popular, right? Whatever mode of communication is popular. 90 with the 99% of language not being above B2, that could be explained by zip FS law, I would think. Oh, interesting. What is that? Zip F. What is that? Law. Maybe partly, but you don't mean C2 level where represent 1% of words you witnessed. Fair enough. More like 99% of whole conversation I witnessed use no C2 level words at all, and 1% of the conversation use some. Oh, that's interesting. I have no idea what C2 level words at all. Like, I have no idea what that is. You're not sure what words would be considered C2 within English? Yeah, I have no idea. You think some fields like academics do hold up, but some business conversations that used to be very serious, formal, simply aren't nowadays, even if the topic being discussed is still serious? That being said, in your case, you also work in a multilingual environment where most people don't have C2 level in their second or third language, so you actually sometimes avoid it to be understood. Exactly. So for me, the appropriateness is that we have this constant battle, right? This constant battle. You have that native Japanese. Like, we're not going to use English. Well, you could use English too. So there's native Japanese, native English, and then there's scholastic. I'm going to call it scholastic. It's a little bit of a more neutral term. Then we have scholastic Japanese and scholastic English, right? Or if we're going to use like B2, B1, textbook, we have textbook and colloquial, or textbook and common, or the other word that people would use is real, right? So now we have real Japanese, real English versus textbook Japanese and textbook English. And for myself, I see it as all of the above. Like, when you're thinking about communication, a form of communication, it's all of the above. Like, it's both. Whether you choose to prioritize one or not is certainly up to the person's applications. So, what is overrepresented? This is overrepresented. So, when I think about where I could get the most value in human communication, it would be doing real common native Japanese and English. And that's where NetSpeak is right now. Whether that's like good or bad for language, or it reduces or increases complexity, it's kind of hard to tell. For myself, I tend to engage in something that is less common, and because I engage in something that's less common, it can be a little bit of a like disagreeable point, right? And in my opinion, there's a grand plan to mine. I understand what's common and real. So for me, this will require less effort. And you might be thinking, wait, you mean like less effort to understand? Or like less time? No, I'm not talking about that. I'm specifically talking about because the exposure rate is very high in my environment, the things that I typically focus on are the unnatural things. And I'm choosing to do this because I don't have to force myself to do this part. So I kind of reverse engineer my things. I like to focus on the nuances and the things that don't come up every day, because those are the things that are interesting but also difficult to retain. Meanwhile, real, common, native, I'm very used to that. Like, for example, if someone comes to me and they hate on Duolingo, that's very common. So I would immediately come up with a routine to address the Duolingo criticisms. That's real, common, native. Like, if someone if someone asks me, what has language learning as a content, right, as a content streamer taught me as a language learner? Duolingo sucks. So I learned that. That is one of the biggest conversation topics in language learning. And then CI is king, even though it's a theoretical concept and whatnot, right? These are the things that I don't spend time reinforcing and whatnot. What I do is I spend time in the nuance of developing counter arguments to the most popular ideas, and that creates learning. That's a learning potential. So whenever I think about C2, right, I start at B1. This is 90% of my conversations. At B1, I spend 90% of my conversations. But whenever someone asks me a personal opinion in something, sometimes I lift into C2. And I don't actually know what C2 words are. It's the concept of speaking in C2. Like, one of the C2 aspects of English is speaking in the subjunctive. To me, it might even be like a C1 concept. I would say C1, C2. The moment you shift from an indicative voice or an indicative mood, I think that's the word they use, indicative mood. When you shift to the subjunctive, immediately you'll start sounding like a politician. Or some sort of intellectual who's very technical and very specific on their range and their qualifications, right? Typically, there's a heavier emphasis on investigative clarity, right? I'm adding like a couple words that would circumvent the ambivalence or possibly the vicissitudes of hearing generalizations of very complex topics. Because the moment you introduce generalizations into complex topics, you elicit a very cringe effect for individuals who work at a very technical level. The moment you say, oh, everyone does that, that's concerning that you just said everyone does that. And when you just say everyone does that, that is incredibly generalized. You will be sent to the slaughters for all the technicalities you have failed to consider. Right. That's kind of what I mean by C1 and C2. I have no idea. Yeah, it's very difficult. Let's see. Some general examples you found online were to abate, analogous, right? Anachronistic, conundrum, languid, salient, yeah. Vexatious, auspicious, condone, right? Connive, I haven't used that before. Erudite, that's right. Glebe, yeah. Affable, and irascible. Or is it I use conundrum, analogous, anachronistic, auspicious, right? And condone, right? Admonish, maybe that's a C2, like to admonish someone. Inculcate, right? Iterate. Iterate is a little bit lower, but I think it's still above the standard B1 stuff, right? Analytically, like comparative analyses, right? Permutations, technicalities. Here's some technicality words that I would say qualify as C2 now. The figurative and literally, those qualify as C2 shifts, because when you do a B1, it's always literally. Things like that, like idiosyncrasies, juxtaposition, comparison and contrast. Yeah, comparison and contrast are now a C2 shift. When you do a B1, you would say, oh, I'm comparing things, and they would cite a contrast. That would be a C2 requirement competence. Whenever, like, I can even see an exam question like that. It's like when you say compare, define what it means to compare A and B. This requires a C2 shift in order to gather the actual meaning of compare A and B, because I don't think this is it anymore. It's always using B1. B1, when you compare A and B, what is compare A and B? X and Y, or X and 0, or 1 and 2. So basically, like, to compare A and B, you look for something that A doesn't have that B has, or B has, or B doesn't have and A have. That is comparison. That's not true. A form of comparison is not that. It's far more nuanced than that. And generally speaking, when you're speaking at B1, that's what I mean by switching them. So regardless if it's words, like for example, when you iterate, right? I think this word is used in B1. When you iterate something, what does that mean? A lot of people would say you repeat. When you iterate, right? You repeat. That's not the same. Repeating is repeating. Iterating is iterating. And this deals with professional language, right? When you repeat a project is different from when you iterate on a project. Iterate has an R&D bent to it. Repeat has a repetition, as a like a how you would say a precision, as a precision bent to it. When you iterate, there's an R&D nuance to this word. You iterate on something because you're going to expect to change it or improve it over time. There's refinement in it. And then when you repeat something, you're trying to increase precision, which is not the same as accuracy, right? And this is a B1 concept that most people fail, in my opinion. When people say, oh, well, I did it 4 times, and I got the same result, it must be accurate. No, it's precise. It's not accurate. You don't know accuracy without a standard. If you don't have a standard or a control, you can't know even if your n equals 100, if it's accurate. It is precise if you get similar results within a range, right? And if that range is confined, there's high precision. Accuracy is based on a standard and control of a known, thing, a known outcome, right? So oftentimes when someone says, oh, I'm accurate about this, it's like, no, you're precise about it, not accurate, right? When someone makes a precise point, it's because they were consistent with their precise point. Whether their statement is accurate or not requires a standard and a relative. That's kind of the idea. And all of this mumbo jumbo sounds like serious language. Like what I'm pointing out is very serious. It's nuanced, but it also sounds pretentious, nitpicky, and optional for most people. And for myself, whenever I'm providing advice or they're really solving problems, this is how I sound. When someone explains to me their problem, it becomes incredibly laborious and exhaustive to the person who I'm speaking to. So I typically try to keep it to like a limited amount of time, right? If I get lucky, I could get a person to keep listening to me for 15 minutes if I were to use like a C2 way of being for clarity sake, right? It's rough. You kind of get it. Okay, so let me somewhat zip ZIPFS or ZIPFS law is just that you rank words by their frequency. Oh, okay. The curve of how common they are is logarithmic, I see. So the most common words appear about twice as much as the second most common word and so on. Oh, okay. And then this law is great news for language learners if their goal is to get upper intermediate level, I see. You actually only need a couple of thousand words even if the language has tens of thousands of words. Yeah. I recently, by coincidence, guys, because I started thinking about my, it's been 400 days now in WaniKani and HanziHero, and we were keeping track of like numbers, right? And at some point on my own, I often comment about English, and English gets as low as 1,000 words, and then as high as 3,000 words for like colloquial use. And when I think about this, like, that's, because I'm trying to gauge, right? And where are we at when it comes to, right, Japanese and Chinese? Well, between the two, we're talking about 7,000 words and 4,000 characters, right? But then I was trying to do some like funny scope thing, trying to figure out like, how do I normalize scope? And we're not talking about one-to-one comparisons. So oftentimes people are like, well, you could argue that 4,000 characters is not the same as 25 letters, right? And I would say, yes, that is true. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to elicit the functionality, so like the application of it. So effectively for me, 4,000 is the 25. So that ratio is not 1-to-1. It's whatever this ratio is. I can't math. But it's this ratio, 4,000 to 25, when it comes to the functional application of trying to elicit proportionality, right? This is proportional, not 1-to-1, as in like, oh, well, you have to remember 4,000 things as opposed to 25 things. That would be inappropriate, right? So instead, I base it on our application. For Chinese, 4,000 is a wonderful way to get to the feeling of 25 letters. Is it 25 letters? Am I crazy? Like, I don't even remember how many letters are in the alphabet. 26. Dang it. I should have went with the 26 earlier. Now I just look like a buffoon. All right. So 26 letters, right? And then vocabulary is very similar. I'm trying to gauge formality. So if my vocabulary is around 7,000, and yet in English, it's anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 for colloquial, where am I on the spectrum of scholastics, right? Like, have I crossed the scholastics point or the colloquial point? And sure enough, I have crossed the colloquial point, which coincidentally lies around 3,000 too, for both languages. And that's pretty interesting. Z isn't a real letter anyways, it's a hoax. You only have 25 in your book. Honestly, yeah, Z is pretty troll, huh? And you can probably throw out Y as well. Who needs Y when you have I? Are you an I fan or are you a Y fan? Like, hear me out. Do you like I more than Y? You know? Like, come on. You might say, well, you can't spell I without I, right? But you can spell you without Y. Aha! Sorry, that's my joke. I was setting myself up for my own joke. But you don't need Y to spell you. You can spell it with you. Who needs Y? Y is lame. I'm kidding. My first name has my given name has a Y in it. But anyways, Y is fairly optional too. It's such a troll of a letter. Anyways, You're absolutely right that C2 is not just using less common. It's all about nuance and very precise vocabulary for the idea you want to convey. Yeah, and of course you mean precise and accurate vocabulary. Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. It's really interesting. I think language learning has made me hyper focus on these things. So have gotten such a wonderful, like English for me has gained a second life. Like nowadays my appreciation for English is almost, I could even like I know other people don't feel this way because they want to leave their language behind. So I'll give one last hot take about like the life thing situation. People, to me, what the internet has done is that it's a one-time thing. Like learning is a one-time thing. Okay, you'll allow Y then for your name since it's your birthday. So the net has done this one-time learning thing. And what I mean by one-time learning thing is it's the mindset that learning is one and done. So oftentimes what has happened is that you know, the first task, the whole like self-evaluation. In order for me to illustrate what I mean by this one and done situation, self-evaluation, I ask someone to self-evaluate oftentimes because if they are unable to self-evaluate, I can't help them with anything because they would be unable to communicate what is it that they want me to know, right? It creates an impasse. So when they self-evaluate, oftentimes, how can you pick out a one and done net person? It often, when they learn something, they often phrase things as, I have done it already. And because they have already done it, it no longer becomes part of their self-evaluation anymore. So for example, they never self-evaluate again on if they learned A and A leads to B. So they learn A, they self-evaluate. But then they go on to learn B and they self-evaluate this way. They don't self-evaluate this way. I just drew a face, you know, you can kind of see maybe it's a frog or a very scary face bear. Anyways, it kind of just looks like a frog. You just have to draw a line here. Anyways, so they don't self-evaluate based on building on their existing knowledge. So I got this question recently. Someone asked me, if you learn something and you correct for it, right? Basically do the self-evaluation. How do you keep this? How do you keep and retain this? That is a legitimate question. Actually, I've been asked multiple times by multiple people. Some are 18 years old, some are 25, some are even 30, but rare, like 32. Right? These are very specific numbers that I kind of chose. They're not arbitrary numbers. And the idea is, well, when you learn something, right? The process of keeping it involves that these two things are connected with each other. So if you choose to only operate in this and you think that you never have to self-evaluate back again to your, like the maintenance of your previous thing, then you're treating it as a one and done. So how does this relate to NetSpeak? Well, whenever someone asks me like, oh, have you done your N5? Right? Have you done your N5 yet? It's like, oh yeah, I've done my N5 1 year ago. And now I'm on my N4. right? And I asked them, oh, so how'd your N5 work? How'd your N5 go? It's like, well, I already done it. And now I'm focusing on N4. And my thought is, well, whether or not you're focused on your N4, you can still tell me about your N5, right? I mean, there's a reason why these are ordered, right? So the idea is these are no longer connected. When you pass something, it's a one and done. And that is, what do, I need a fancy word for this. What would this be called? A memory leak. This would be a memory leak, or some people might call this like a leech. When you like leak, when you have a memory leak. Or a, I was gonna say, technically I would call this a maintenance issue. Like there's a maintenance issue where if you build yourself up, right? If you build yourself up, the top part is the least used. And when we were talking about like C1, right? Like A1, A2, B1, B2, and so on. Oftentimes this reflects the frequency of their use. Like, will we ever see a time where like suddenly C1 is like over exaggerated compared to the other ones? Probably not. And this is the way thinking stacks too. The way thinking works. So like bottom is memory and repetition. The second is like trigger. Context trigger. I'm going to just call it context trigger. And then up here is analytical. And then up here is creation. There's a lot more in between. But the idea is that there are some fundamentals, whether you want them or not. It's the it's the mode of application. Or not mode. Maybe I will use the mechanism of application. So if you're for myself, I've said this before, I spent so much time online and live streaming and stuff in B1 and B2. If I were to take an exam, like if I were to take whatever a C1 C2 exam is or something like that, I would be worried. There's no amount of complacency that would tell me, like, I'm literally using that word, there's no amount of word of encouragement to myself or understanding what I have done before to make me complacent enough to think that if I take a C1 C2 exam now, I would not have I would encounter problems, because it's upwards. So like when I'm using B1 B2, I'm practicing also. The idea is you're practicing A1 and A2 as well. So oftentimes anything below it is great. And that's where most people think happens, right? That's how when you learn A, right? When you learn N5 and you go to N4, you hope that even though you're not thinking about N5, you're using N5 while you're doing N4. And so on. And I feel like this is, I don't know Japanese enough. I feel like this is that's how they ordered it, right? This is scholastics. When we talk about scholastics, there's a lot of people done lots of hard work. You know, historically, they ordered the things. That's how the ordered things work. In colloquialism, that's not true anymore. At least I don't think it's true. I don't think this is true because the internet can present information in any order. So you can have someone who, for example, ChatGPT is a really wonderful asynchronous source of information. You can have someone, like, I had someone explain to me. Someone explained to me what being a PhD holder means, right? And they were able to explain to me really, really well what ChatGPT would say, but it is without understanding. That's like someone who reads really well but gets frustrated when they have trouble listening. The idea is that you can be introduced with targeted information or targeted exposure that circumvents the order of things. You don't have to do it in those order. And no, I don't think this is a bad thing. Is this bad? It's bad if it upsets you, right? Like, for example, when someone asks me, oh, are you good at speaking Chinese and Japanese? Absolutely not. I didn't do any speaking. I rarely do any speaking. Why would I ever expect that? So it's not a bad thing. But someone will tell you, well, aren't you upset that you're doing all this work looking at characters and stuff, but you can't still speak Japanese? Like, no, because I understand how to get there. I understand what my process is lacking and what I need to do or work on. The problem with ChatGPT and all the other things is that it takes the process out of the equation. So whenever someone wants a piece of information, they can learn that, or quote unquote, know that piece of information without ever needing to use it. So now you can have info without application. And to me, that's kind of where we were going with between like saying C2 and B1, right? Is it rarer for people to not know C2 stuff? I don't think so, because the internet has that information. People will still know what C2 information is. They can memorize vocabulary or something, or tell other people what C2 sounds like, because there's input for that. There's input for that information. However, can they execute it? Right? Can they execute it? But the answer is probably no. So in a way, no is not becoming rare. It's not being rare. But then it's also yes, it's becoming rare. And the qualification that I'm having is that the execution of C2 is becoming rarer and rarer. Whether they know the information, I mean, the internet is filled with information, and it can inculcate as long as, or it can iterate on itself as long as there's motivation to know that information. But B1 is becoming, it's increasing, and the information for B1 is still going to be available. So in this way, you can make an argument that, yeah, B1, the execution of B1 is going to be greater and greater. In fact, I don't know how Japanese people feel about their language yet, but you can see a parallelism. Someone can ask, oh, how much Japanese do I need? And someone could say 2,000 characters. How much Chinese or traditional Chinese do I need? Someone could say 3,000 characters. All right. And my thought is, why are you asking, like, for my stuff is like, may I ask, why do you think of this as a bottom line? Right? Like, for myself, whenever I think of someone constantly asking me about the bottom line for something, my first thought is, are you really just gonna settle for bottom line? What that means to me is, remember that top one, self-evaluation. And then the self-evaluation requires that someone is constantly self-improving underneath self-evaluation. So whenever someone says, oh, I'm going to get to 2,000 characters, like, I'm done. I got it. I'm done. Like, what do you mean you're done? Like, you're done? What do you mean? Like, you never have to do it again? It's like you're gonna have to do it for the rest of your life. Or are you saying that you're done and you never have to do it again and you're never going to use it? That means this person has learned information without application. And this sounds like an obvious... I feel like if I'm talking to someone who's a professional who has gone through many chapters in their lives, this sounds like a, well, yeah, duh, that's like, why do you have to say these things? I can't tell you how often when someone says, how often I get, how do I keep things I read or hear? And you know, the answer would be, well, you learn to use it. That's one of the solutions. You learn to use what you read and hear so you get to keep them. Otherwise, you can read and hear them again and again and again. And most people, like at least we're gonna say around 25 and younger, they prefer to choose to keep on reading and hearing the same thing over and over again. That's their strategy. Their strategy is to do the thing over and over again. So why do I have a particular issue about this? Maybe this is an issue that might not come to pass for other people. This has a scaling problem. Whenever I think about standardized testing, you know, like your N5 to your N4 or your HSK1 to your HSK2, I like to trust the linguists who came up with these things, you know, like the different experts, that the reason why they tiered these things the way they did, again, this is relying on expertise that I do not have, is the idea that they were structured in this way so that they can address a scaling problem. So if you are trying to memorize N5 to N1, you might get away with it, right? You might get away with it. Sure. What is happening is it's not telling you how N5 is part of N4, is part of N3, is part of N2, which is part of N1. Now, if you're thinking, isn't that the same thing as memorizing N5 through N1? No, you're not understanding the connection between all the concepts. When you understand the connection between the concepts, then you address a scaling problem. One of the toughest parts that I'm having problems with when people talk about like science, for example, is that they believe when you learn geometry, right? For example, in math, I don't have a high level math. My highest level math is like calculus. So that's it's not like differential equations and all that stuff. So geometry. And what they do is they go and later down they do trigonometry. Or I don't know, polar coordinates. Right? Polar coordinates. And when I'm asking them, it's like, oh, so you can do polar coordinates by looking at its relationship between geometry and trigonometry, right? But here's the thing. When I ask them, what do they know about this? They would say, I know nothing. That's why I'm learning it. And my first thought is, what do you mean you know nothing? What did you think geometry and trigonometry was trying to set up? Right? And that is what I mean by one and done. And hear me out. This is natural. This is a natural human growth. Early on, there's hyper grooming. And for me, when someone come of age, I talked about this when I was playing Kiwami 3 a lot because it's about kids growing up. When you come of age, one of the things you kind of learn over time in high school or however early on you have is the idea that when you learn the connections between disciplines, it becomes quote unquote easier to remember or easier to maintain, right? Because there's scalability when you're overlapping concepts. You're finding the relationship between the concepts, or what I call associations. You're learning by association, right? And association is very similar to that feeling of understanding. The moment you understand something, it becomes associated with your body of knowledge that you have and your wisdom, right? Like the moment you look at polar coordinates attached to the rest of your memories is the moment you feel like, oh, I understand it now, because everything is framed in your perspective. So for this, it's usually not the case. What happens is geometry is compartmentalized, trigonometry is compartmentalized, and the concept of polar coordinates is compartmentalized. And that is what ChatGPT is. ChatGPT does not connect these things for you. It does not explain these connections for you. It tells you what you want. So when ChatGPT tells you like, oh, viruses are not living things, which that it's a really common question that I get, even though I'm no longer a virologist, right? Viruses are not living things. That's what ChatGPT can tell you. It does not explain your experience on how to conceptualize why is it not a living thing? How is it a not living thing? Based on whose standards, what arbitrary, like there's no connection here. It is isolated, right? This thing is isolated. And the chances of you remembering that virus are not a living thing is gonna be very unlikely. Because there's no process to get to this, nor is there a process to get out. However, there's a catch. Like for me, whenever I ask someone, hey, what do you know about viruses? And they tell me that ChatGPT told them that viruses are not a living thing, then what happens is I become a link. So then when I introduce more information, then they have executed on this information. Even that can boost retention. Now, a lot of times people would say, well, this is just the output hypothesis. Like in language, right? When the output hypothesis is that if you look at this character and then you write it a billion times, right? When you write this, actually, I don't think that's right, Shokoro. Anyways, when you write this a bunch of times, you'll remember it, right? That's not the same thing. That's not the same thing. I am the link because I'm a person, and that person has a lot of qualities. So any of those qualities can elicit this memory. That's not the same as compartmentalizing a character and doing it a bunch of times and hopefully it comes back to you. So how is this related? Both inputs and output can be compartmentalized. And when they're compartmentalized, then the only way they can be recalled is in this compartment. It's not attached to anything else outside of it. Like there's nothing else that will bring back this memory. So to me, like here's a brain diagram, right? And I'm not a neurologist, but here's the sagittal, right? Sagittal cross section of the brain, right? I will just add a little bit of wrinkles to make it look like it's a brain, right? We'll put a pair of eyeballs right here. Right. Anyways, so this is the brain, and how I often view a person who like hyper compartmentalized nowadays, like when I think of Gen Z. Of course, if this doesn't apply to you, that's perfectly fine. These are generalities, so take it with a grain of salt. When I think about neuronal connections, I think about like they still operate like this. Oh, this part is dedicated to math. This part is dedicated to social science. And like this part is dedicated to, I don't know, Japanese language, Japanese. And then like this part is dedicated to English. This is how I feel that people imagine how they learn and retain things. They think that the brain is still zonal, which by the way was I forgot how long ago it was. Like, I still think it's still pervasive now, but there used to be an idea where the brain used to be zonal and like it's completely exclusively zonal for functions and whatnot and memories. That's not really how that works anymore, because it's with more knowledge came higher complexity. And whenever someone like talks when they're doing math homework, it's like it has nothing to do with science, or it has nothing to do with like chemistry, right? That to me is why there's a ChatGPT symptom. Everything is categorized. It's all generalized. So when someone says they like video games, it can't possibly have anything to do with movies, because video games and movies are two separate things. When you're comparing A and B, they can't possibly have similarities because they're two different things. So that's how, in my opinion, how people learn language too. So now we go all the way back to the very beginning about like people bettering themselves and hoping that they it all come like, that's what I mean as well, where when someone learns something, like when I was using the example of that guy failing the N3, I I was explaining the connection between their experience and their memory and their behavior in their English with their Japanese, because both of those things are in his brain. They're happening in his brain. But this person, when they present information and stuff, think that it's unique to Japanese. Like them failing the N3 is unique to Japanese. And to me, that's part of the picture. Like, I'm not saying it's not part of the picture, or it's not accurate, or related in some regards. The idea is, what happened to comparison? Like, did you have this problem in English? Because the way you talk makes me sound like you wouldn't get past N3 in Japanese. I know that's a little bit tall order. I'm barely N3, like we're still going over the N5 up to the N3 concepts, but you're barely N3. Like, if I was thinking about the concepts that were in N3 Japanese, it's barely executed in the English with that person's English. So it's not to say that that person isn't competent in like B2, B1, B2 English. Is the idea that how often have they used it? Because you still need to use the things in order to elicit the interactions between this. So learning another language helps, and I'll go back to my appreciation for English. Learning Chinese and Japanese has double bolstered my like enthusiasm for English, because now I get to remember all the things that I haven't formed the connections for. And for the record, when I think about a brain, when it comes to like a person's memory, what happens is you establish something. Say this is English. And then Japanese comes along and you establish something. It is through these cross-sectional areas, right? All these like nodes of interaction that creates redundancy. And that redundancy helps the scalability problem. And that's kind of why linguistics is awesome, right? In English, or not in English, but in terms of like human concepts, when we look for patterns of overlap and like structure and order and whatnot, it helps with scalability. What you then do is the time you take to use your N5 is stacked on the time you use your N4. So at any time when you're using N4, it elicits N5, and so on and so forth, right? So that's the concept of these scholastic achievements. I don't know what happened, in my opinion. I don't know what happened entirely I guess I don't know when specifically when this started transitioning, but I could definitely see that this type of thing broke down when ChatGPT came up, when like the internet was the default. Anyways, you're all for people setting goals for themselves, but in your opinion, the idea that reaching a goal would mean you're done learning should never be a thing unless you actually lose interest in the matter at the hand. I agree. You need to go to bed, but thanks for once again, Greg. You feel like we covered a lot of ground tonight. You missed me derailing from Wanikani HanziHero reviews. Hey, we can throw in Boon Pro nowadays. We can talk about Boon Pro sometime. We'll try to catch another stream somewhat soon, depending on the time of your day. Live stream. Yeah, thanks for hanging out. It's always a pleasure, Gecko. You always offer the opportunity to converse. I was gonna just go through today and just cruise today, but I really appreciate you stopping by. And obviously, I hope you're doing well and everything is going well. And we gotta catch up on what you're doing in the language learning front, or anything else. But this would be the normal time now. Like, I did before you go, I have failed to start at the normal time. like progressively. We kept going later and later because of other derailments. So, however, we're going back to the normal, like the time frame. So it will be more apparent that I'm streaming on a daily basis. Until then, I really appreciate your stopping by. It was a heavy coincidence. Obviously, no obligations. Take care. Rest well. Always appreciate it. All right. And to save some time, we're probably just gonna complete. We're not out of topics. We're not out of topics for next time. Have a good one. Yeah, definitely not out of topics. Plenty more. Okay. I
沙
think there are only a few more characters. I think we're just gonna play Kiwami through from then on. Oh, what is this? Oh. Yo, what?
Xu
Long-winded. Indeed. I feel ya. Excuse me. Where's this scepter coming from? Was that a king? Oh no, wait. Scepter and king are the same thing. Hmm. Dang it. I don't know what that is.
岛
Doll.
曹 是 深
Yep. 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 That's a tough one. That is a tough one. Oh.
惨 线
What? Oh, I want to D it. Hang on. I still think it's D.
地
Dang it. Oh, where the D? Where's Oh. Alright. Gui. Gui. Oh. Oh, it's Gui. It was either Quay or Gui, but it's Gui. Marvelous. Gotta Scooby-Doo it. Pass for me for now. Unless I can link it with some. No, off the top of my head. Huh. A leather with a container of rice, you say? I don't understand you. Some part of me wants to type G. Why is it G? Oh my goodness. Hold up. I'm gonna say bow. That was somewhere in the recess of my mind, but I thought it couldn't possibly be G for bow. Okay. Alright. I understand where I got that from. Sometimes they just work, I suppose. There's no way I can get myself out of this, right? No dice.
搓
What? Huh.
锤 战 龟
Why do I think it's, okay. It's not, which is useful, I think. I think that's, oh man, that's a light boat.
挺 路
What? I think that's me. Okay.
营
That not camp? Huh. Barrel and field. Okay. I don't think I have a do I have a word example for you? Okay. Okay, that's fine.
May.
，May it's like conceal. Okay, dim. Couldn't think of the word dim. How do I dim this? Oh, starve? No, lopsided. Oh no, I think lopsided needs. I typed G and I thought it was male. I can see why I think it's related to male because it's probably the barrel. Yeah. I think this is a. Oh, I'll give it a good. Oh wait.
鸡
The read. Okay, will be our link. Okay. Yeah, I think we're just gonna pass for today and go into our Kiwami stuff. Before the night is over, kind of a little bit of an indulgence. Hang on. So T lopsided was pretty bad. Temporarily. What was the other one? I mean, May or dim. There was one. There was one other. What was D? No, we got stem. Nah, these are fine. Let's go over our stuff. Another day. Another day with how large gaps. Call it a birthday respite. Okay. Next one. Next one. So fool. That's a weird fool. This is a weird duel as well. This was a weird call. Huang's okay. Huang is okay. Chi is okay. Is it Ba? No, it's Ba. Which is okay. Not too bad today. Gang Shima. Gang Kui. My eyeballs. Okay. I stopped blinking. My Jiao. Something Jiao. Oh no, Yao. Fan Yao. Shui Yao. Wait, whoa, hold up. That's not right, is it? No. Wait. Yeah, Cao. Yeah, Shui Cao. Yao Ban. Luo Po. Gu Liu. Liang Cheeks. Liang Jia. Gu Turang. Turang, not Turang. Yao. Ugh. 要桥手腕我夺魁大脚大脚大脚哦，哎，瓦窑。Okay, all right. We got Frankenstein. Frankenstein sees a foreman outside. Next to the trellis in the yard. He's applying his communication skills, right? That he learned from Dr. Frankenstein. Offers the guy a compass on his merry way. Dumbledore, bathroom, office. Helping out a leftist with the dirt after tumbling on the hillside. On the fall, right? That he can get to work on his night shift. Casper. Casper, front of barn. Oh, a declaration. For rice shortage. Tried to help out with the rough season. Like the rough season by taking care of rice fields next to the Koopa bathroom. Apple. Yeah, during the day. Hoping during the day, setting up a shack enclosed with a large aquarium or a expanded aquarium. Is the whole thing the aquarium? Where does the... Oh. Taking like the bucket to fill out the aquarium. Good enough. Bigfoot in front of the English Manor. No, bark in front of the English Manor. Firing a bunch of moon things. Stretching out a silk, right? Stretching out taut. Firing a mountain of moon-shaped targets at the English Manor. Okay. Julius Caesar. Bathroom. House. Demanding that there be metal flags and tombstones marking everything. Order that start sawing and preparing metal right away. What do we got? Bart Simpson, bathroom, auditorium. Oh, he does this thing where, like, take some soil, wrap it around, like, take some soil, construct a dam at night, trigger the sprinklers in rain. Where does the leather thing come in? Maybe like wrap the dirt around with leather. This is memorable because the other thing deals with leather as well. For the tyrant. Oops, I missed the stroke. It'll be alright. Alright, and then there was maybe 2 or 3 characters. They're kind of loose in my head right now, but yeah, I think we're just gonna go past it. Had good digressions. It's been a while. I think it's been 1 or 2 weeks since we had a solid conversation about some sort of language related thing. Anachronistic. Can't believe anachronistic is C2. I'm kind of curious. Gotta look at some C2 vocabulary today. Yeah. Went from birthday to that comment about the selfish wish, right? It's kind of a selfish wish. I think that I reiterate what I wanted to, what I was saying from that. When people in the world have less problems, it also means that there's less problems for you, right? So I want, like, if there's any selfishness in the birthday wish, is that when people are on their A game, they also produce great things for other people. So I'm about to play a video game, right? Like after this, I've been playing video game. For like example, these tools like HanziHero and Wanikani. It's people who encounter problems, but they are up to the task of solving those problems. And that's kind of what led into everything else. I notice there's, you notice a lot of problems lately. And I see problems. I also see potential solutions. And some part of the potential solution is to raise awareness. Talk about these things. So I talked about how like C2, B1 stuff. Not in the case of it being good or bad, but more like being aware of what's happening, and then you can flip and develop your skills and whatnot, right? So the example that I talked about were various ways dissonance can lead to outcomes that are undesirable. Whether those outcomes will continue to be upsetting to people, is where I had that selfish wish. I hope that in life, there are more people who continue to experience that they encounter problems, but they are healthy, content, well privileged enough to be able to overcome those problems. I think regardless of the nature of the problem, like the severity and difficulty, when someone is incredibly healthy, content, and able to content and healthy with like the support, the support system, proper self-evaluation and human communication, at least those things and more, obviously, that was just off the top of my head, they are able to overcome those problems or find rationalities. And when the world has, whenever you're making a wish, you can only think about yourself, right? Like you think of your one person. But if there's anything that a wish can go a long way, is the idea that for every one of me, if I can give up something that I can wish for like 1,000 of others who I might meet sometime around my, like, I want my support system to be well, right? So part of the equation is not just you, but it's everyone around you or everyone you might potentially meet, and it's very uncontrollable. So having wish is kind of like that. When you wish for something, you often wish for things, at least in my opinion, wish for to get lucky with things you can't control. How well my life is going, or like if I'm happy with my life, that's still relatively more in my control than the welfare of the people I encounter. I think I truly think that compassion raises to the surface. Philanthropy and good well-being and stuff becomes more and more prominent when humans are able to actually realize their contentment and their happiness. It is often the face of desperation, insecurities, all your negative feelings, right? That comes with the inability at the moment, not like inability is not the greatest, or the unavailability of being compassionate and sympathetic and empathetic when one is already suffering, struggling with things. I mean, I know this sounds like a very serious topic, but it can be trivial ones too, like, or trivial to me personally, like failing an exam. Failing an exam was the example that I use. While a lot of people will argue failing an exam is no big deal, you're going to fail a lot of exams and you're going to pass a lot of exams. However, to that person at that time, in that moment, if that was like one of the first exams that they failed, it can be a really big deal. And the idea is others are able to say it's not a big deal because they have found catharsis and consent, like contentment in understanding that they failed a lot of exams over their years, and they also have succeeded a lot of exams over their years. And being able to accomplish that task, I hope that person finds it, right? As well as others. So as a bit of a wrap up of where all that digression went. Then it went into like C2 and talking about like Gen Z and net speak, how like there really isn't bad or good things per se when it comes to the objective nature of communication. It's more what is most appropriate in a way that is popular and help people exercise sympathy and empathy, right? You want to reach a point of compassion when it comes to understanding yourself through self-evaluation, having a support system so you have immediate ways of getting feedback outside of yourself, and then that focus on human communication creates that sympathy. And it's probably my cheapest and a little bit more identifiable way of saying world peace is fantastic. Like, I'm a product of, I understand this is coming at a very awkward time because I do live in the United States, and that I'm very grateful and privileged to not experience what wartime is like. And I'm going to say this with a grain of salt. I am a product of wartime so far. Not a product of wartime. I'm a product of peacetime so far. And yes, I am very much aware that that is not true for all the people that live on this planet. And even so, some of them also involve the situation that is currently happening, right? That is a very topical thing. And that's kind of where, like, I'm 39 now, and I didn't talk about where that wish was coming from. Actually, Gecko, I don't think anyone has ever asked me what I would wish for, typically. So if there was a wish, it would be that peacetime is universal. Peacetime is universal so that it would alleviate the overall burden on humanity in general. And that's kind of like I feel like it's like a pageant answer, right? What do you wish for? World peace. Like, I wanted to extend even more than world peace. Like, more the fundamental of where war comes from. And that is that if there's anything I can wish for, is that there would be a net positive in human privileges, right? I mean, that stems from, that underlies, starvation, equity, and whatnot. Less human, I suppose you could say less human suffering, but more so, less human suffering that leads to human contentment, that promotes problem-solving skills and critical thinking skills. The idea that there will be problems, problems will come up. Life will present problems in every shape and form, but humans are able to have enough resources or enough contentment in life to be able to tackle them. That's kind of the birthday wish. Anyways, until next time, that's a wrap for HanziHero today. I know this this volume is stacking up. One good day will knock out someone. Anyways, until then, if you're gonna watch this later, 谢谢. As always, feel free to follow along, pick up HanziHero for yourselves, give it a go. You're always welcome to come on by and yap, catch up. And if you like doing that, there's always the Discord. I yapped a bit today. The stuff that I mentioned today was related to something that someone shared before I started streaming today in the Discord. I yap a lot in both text form and speaking. I do stand by my observations regarding the deficiency. And what I mean by deficiency is the perceived deficiency by other people. I don't particularly think that people are speaking and communicating, or speaking and listening poorly, in the sense that it is making it difficult for me to understand them in a very negative way. I think people are speaking and listening appropriately for their consistent mode of interaction, and that is reading and writing, or technically reading and typing. Speaking and listening is incredibly machine aided, right? Curated editorials, camera, recording devices, various things lead to editorials. They are edited, proofreaded, curated. Technology creates the semblance of heightened speaking and listening skills that is not transferable to the human experience. It is aided and complemented. So whether that's sufficient is up to the person who is satisfied with it. And right now, whenever someone shows me something negative that is dissonant, is the idea that I was pointing out. You can have brilliant people who read and type that are very high, C2, whatever, the max native fluency, and yet they are surprised oftentimes when they have a disproportionate deficiency in speaking and communication or listening skills, despite them making content and recording things that would demonstrate to them, at least in my opinion, through observational skills, that they don't have those skills intact. And those are like fundamental things. So I welcome my solution, quote unquote, my jerry-rig solution is to constantly encourage people to discuss, talk, and think in various mediums, right? Yes, it is a starting place. That person make content that in which they record and speak and communicate and listen to feedback or read feedback. That is a great way to improve communication. So much like everyone else, there's an openness to that. I like to encourage people. Obviously, not everyone can just straight up go to a mic and do this, but self-evaluation can also help. Developing ideas, communicating, because communication breeds problem-solving skills and critical thinking skills. I think that leads to an overall quality of life. It's incredibly underrated. It's exhausting I totally understand it. Not everything has to be serious at a deep level. However, if nothing or rarely is ever serious or require critical thinking, problem solving skills, then you don't have that skill either. It's very analogous to expecting yourself to speak and listen very well when the vast majority of activities is avoidant of speaking and listening and predominantly writing and or typing and reading, right? And that is not a bad thing. It's also not a good thing to a lot of people, or it's not good enough. So let's encourage each other to be discussing, having discussions, conversing, various things, and encourage each other to have dialogue and work on that communication skill. So until then, 大家下次见，感谢观看. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. I'm gonna get up, stretch, walk around, a quick bathroom break, and I'll be back for Kiwami 3. Thank you.